It was a 1-year anniversary of Forced to Vote. And now, do you remember what Forced to Vote was? Forced to Vote was we had figured out at this show that when the Democrats lost a bunch of House seats, that now the margin of their majority was so small that the squad were the deciding votes on must-pass bills. And one of those votes we wanted was a Medicare for All vote. And we wanted them to withhold their vote for Nancy Pelosi as Speaker because they could stop her from being Speaker if they wanted. And say, we'll only vote for you if you agree to have a vote for Medicare for All. And I thought of that because that was something that everyone agreed on. Everybody on the left, from the DSA to the squad to Nancy Pelosi, to everybody had said we got to get a vote on Medicare for All. Everybody had said that. The squad, AOC ran on it. So we said, well, this is your perfect opportunity. Tell Nancy Pelosi to give us a vote on Medicare for All, or else you won't vote for her for Speaker, and she can't become Speaker without their vote. So this is what we did. Force a vote. Withhold your vote for Pelosi. Fewer than 15 House reps can determine a Medicare for All gets a vote. It was way less. So these are all the people who consider themselves progressives, and it turns out none of them really are. None of them. None of them, from AOC all the way over here to Ro Khanna. None of them are willing to actually fight for you. None of them.
Jimmy, you have to understand, they didn't want to screw up David Sirot's movie deal.
Very well put.
1, 2, 3, woo! Force the
We even
vote.
had a song.
You know that you have got to force the vote. You know that you have got to. Do you want to be a fighter? Now's your time. You have
Who
got
made
to
that?
try to make the future brighter. You have got to stand for what is right. Come together, make the world a little better for me. And you, yeah. Do you want to be a fighter? Do you wanna force
The vote.
you know that you have got to?
Force the vote.
You know that you have got to.
So that was Jake and Molly Chapman who wrote that and performed that. That was fantastic. So what it started was we were just doing what everybody said that we should do. Everybody said that we should do this. Until it came time to do it, and then half the people, or more than half, said don't do it. So AOC, this is from AOC from December 2nd. She said the whole point of protesting is to make people uncomfortable. Activists take that discomfort with the status quo and advocate for concrete policy changes. Popular support often starts small and grows. To folks who complain protest demands make others uncomfortable, that's the point. Wow. She said that December 2nd. So as soon as someone decided to take her advice and make politicians uncomfortable, they started screaming bloody murder. It's time to you make Nancy Pelosi uncomfortable and demand she bring Medicare for All up for a vote, and we'll make her uncomfortable by withholding your vote for her as Speaker. If you do that, you get Medicare for All vote. Now is the time. Stop being a Twitter warrior and do this. That was also the same day, December 2nd. Justin Jackson then went on Twitter and said, if AOC and the squad don't do what Jimmy Dore has suggested and withhold their vote for Pelosi for speakership, unless Medicare for All gets brought up to the floor vote, they will be revealing themselves. Power concedes nothing without a demand. So that was Justin Jackson from the LA Chargers and Northwestern University. And then Alexandria, who would never acknowledge me, who we started the Force the Vote movement, she thought she was going to be able to spank Justin Jackson down. He's a dumb football player, right? That's what she thought. So she comes at him. Problem with this idea is that there isn't enough thought given to step 2. The Dems votes aren't there yet. And with the razor-thin margin in the Dem no's are greater than margin. Okay. So you issue threats, hold your vote, and lose. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. You said popular support often starts small and grows. That's what you said. And you're supposed to demand others get uncomfortable. But now she's saying Wait a minute. We don't have the votes. That was never the point. The point was to get a vote on Medicare for all, and that would create momentum, and all eyes would be on. And now we know who's on. I want to see people vote no against Medicare in the middle of a pandemic. That's what everybody wanted. This is her gaslighting and lying. And so this revealed AOC and the rest of the squad to be nothing but phonies. What are they? They are enablers of the establishment. So a vote for AOC is just like a vote for Nancy Pelosi, because she will never, ever go against Nancy Pelosi, and she never has.
Jimmy, are you sure that this is not just because you want to date?
That's probably most of it. So here she says, you issue threats, you hold your vote and lose. Then what? If you want to know who's opposed, look at the co-sponsor list. Again, so she's like, we're not going to do it. We're not going to demand anything for our vote from Nancy Pelosi. Justin Jackson comes back and says, why aren't they there? The people of the party are there. It's not acceptable leadership isn't there. If they have no threat of not staying in leadership, what's the point? Pelosi was speaker for 2 years with no Medicare for all vote. What is your plan to force her to get a vote? She says, why aren't they there is the real question. We watched the presidential debates and saw how many fiercely defend our for-profit insurance system. But know that the movement pressure, positive support, primaries, popularity, organizing, etc. is working. More co-sponsors now. So she's like saying, just keep doing stuff, but never actually force a vote on it. Do everything except something that would make a difference, is what she says. So she's gaslighting us. This is politics 101. You demand something for your vote. The Blue Dogs did this last time and Pelosi caved. The only reason AOC won't do this is because she's a careerist who won't ever cross party leaders. I can't believe she would try and excuse this lame. Yes, she would. Justin Jackson said, would love for the Democrats to be on record denying their constituents health care during a pandemic. Sounds like good politics for the progressive movement and for our goals. So that was Justin Jackson taking it to AOC. AOC did not see it coming, and he slammed her, and she revealed that she's a phony and an enabler of the establishment, and she'll never fight for you. That's what this revealed. And that the Justice Democrat experiment started by Cenk Uygur and Kyle Kulinski was now an abject failure. And I think I think at least Kyle has admitted that. So that's what was revealed in this. And then people started to attack me over it. And the first one was the executive producer of the Young Turks, Anna. No one believes me anymore, Kasparian. She came out and she said, it's one thing to debate the strategies lawmakers like AOC should take. My issue with Dore is that I don't believe he says anything in good faith. It's incredible to witness his rage-filled demands of some lawmakers. Jimmy Dore's getting mean to lawmakers. His rage-filled demands of some lawmakers while he refused to hold Tulsi accountable for a damn thing.
Oh, did she stop Medicare for all?
I don't think Tulsi had anything to do with it. So here we go. Ready? She says, with that said, pressuring politicians to actually represent us is the right thing to do. I just question his intentions, and for good reason, even a broken clock, etc. So she's saying Jimmy Dore's doing the right thing, but I just want to smear a former employee of the Young Turks for absolutely no reason. Well, the reason is she's jealous, and B, she got humiliated because they were conspiracy theorists with Russiagate, and I debunked them in their own studio every week, and they got embarrassed and humiliated, as they should. But instead of going introspectively and changing, they doubled down. They turned their backs on me, Steve O, Malcolm Fleshner, everybody on aggressive progressives, and they got even shittier. And then they went on to McCarthy smear anybody who's their political enemy. And red bait, that's what they do. So it's amazing. Even as she knows, yes, Jimmy Dore's got the right idea. I want to shit on a former employee for absolutely. So that started it. And that was when the Young Turks picked a fight with the Jimmy Dore show, and they lost terribly. Terribly, they lost. Unbelievable. I can't believe that the lights are still on over there. They get 6,000. The other last Wednesday when we live streamed, we had 18,000 live stream viewers. They had 6,000. Jimmy Dore in his garage. Little Jimmy Dore.
Little Jimmy?
Little Jimmy Dore in his garage had 18,000 live stream viewers, and the Young Turks had 6. There's no one watching their show anymore. So that was a big mistake when they picked a fight with me. And they thought I was going to be like Dave Rubin or something, or I don't know what they thought. I thought I was going to be another Jordan Cheriton or another Dave Rubin, and I was just going to take it. But I wasn't, and I exposed them for the frauds that they are. Now everybody knows they're frauds, and now they're just another show. I don't know how they're keeping the lights on over there, but they are. So that's how that started. And then, so also known as the I hate Jimmy Dore and everything he does, but I can't publicly reject his idea because I would expose myself even more than I already did. So let me make Attack the Messenger the centerpiece of my argument and hope nobody notices routine. That's exactly what happened. What's that?
Well, I mean, you would think if she had any brains, she would just not say anything. I want to trash him, but I know it'll hurt me. But it's so good to trash him. I gotta get one in.
I still want to trash him. I so want to, and that's what started off the downfall of the Young Turks. And the Young Turks couldn't stop lying. So then they actually stopped saying it was a good idea, and they were against the forced to vote. And they did a poll. They did a poll of their own viewers, and their own 85.2% of their own paying members were for forced to vote. And the Young Turks were against it. And it was transparent that they were gaslighting people and lying about it. Like, here's Cenk Uygur lying. He says right here that this one where you can hand the speaker to the GOP, he's saying Kevin McCarthy could become speaker. Now, that's a lie. That's not a mistake that Cenk made because he was corrected on it 1,000,000 times, and he never acknowledged his mistake. It's not. So that means it's not a mistake, and Cenk was lying. Why? To protect the squad, which he sells T-shirts with their face on it at their TYT store next to their coffee and their emojis and Cenk's book that he never wrote and all their other shit. Okay. But I'm the grifter, even though I told people to keep their money for an entire year while these guys were doing this, lying and telling people that the GOP could get the speakership. So that's when they started to do that. And here's Ryan Grimm came on our show. And he works for Cenk Uygur. He takes a check now from 3 different billionaires, Ryan Grimm. He takes a check from Jeffrey Katzenberg, billionaire. He takes a check from the Hill, billionaire. And he takes a check from Pierre Omidyar over at the Intercept. So 3 different billionaires. He takes a check from 3 different ones. And he came on the show and explained to us that McCarthy could not become speaker.
That was Ryan Grimm that did that?
Yes.
Did he explain that to you?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, watch. Here, watch him do it.
So she has to go to the House floor, and she has to get 218 votes.
Right.
And Republicans aren't going to vote for her. And so if she can't get 218 Democrats, then there's no speaker.
Right.
And then it kicks back to the caucus, and then it's chaos, and then a whole bunch of people can run, and then somebody will emerge. Somebody would emerge from that process, who would then also need to unify the party and say we need 218 votes to get to the House floor. So she won it in the caucus, but she has to get through the process because she needs a full-on majority of 218.
And the worry is that if they withhold their vote, she doesn't become, and then it goes back, and they pick someone who's even further to the right of her. Right? That's what people are.
That's what people say.
That's hard to get someone further to the right of Nancy Pelosi, isn't it? Come on.
You would think so, but not quite. I mean, it depends on.
So there you go. Can't happen. McCarthy cannot become speaker. They need 218 votes, which is a majority, and the Republicans don't have the votes. They don't have enough votes. So, and then David Sirota. So what he went on to do in this interview was then say, I'm not asking for enough. That asking for vote on Medicare for all was not enough. He started saying, I need to ask for all these things. So that was the trick that they were using. So the people that were protecting the squad, like him and Cenk Uygur, and I'll show you David Sirota in a minute, they were using this gaslighting trick to confuse people. Oh, you're not asking for enough. You got to ask for more. I'm like, we're not even going to get this fuckface, and you know it. And now you're trying to muddy the waters by saying we should ask for this and that and other. Well, here's David Sirota doing it. He says negotiation 101 is we want this, and this, and this. You may get one this. We only want this. You probably end up getting. So that's when David Sirota started writing articles and trying to confuse the left, the progressives who wanted to vote on Medicare for all, that we should be asking for more things. Him knowing that we weren't even going to get a fucking Medicare for all vote. He knew that. So this is them muddying the waters of why he did that. And it's anybody's own guess why David Sirota was doing that.
Wait,
he was go ahead.
I thought Negotiation 101 was the name of his new movie in development at Netflix.
So he wrote articles saying all this. In fact, it was obviously he was jealous that a comedian came along and was able to generate interest in Medicare for all and had an actual plan to get a vote on it. And so he wrote this article, and in it he tried to throw shade on me, but it was so transparent it made him look silly again. He goes, for instance, we should be doing more things. This is what he said. For instance, it is easier to do YouTube rants and get retweets about a high-profile floor vote than it is to get everyone excited about the much harder organizing work of getting esoteric HHS waivers or removing a relatively obscure committee chairman who was blocking progress. And so when I had David on the show, I asked him, I go, well, if it's so easy to do one of those YouTube rants that gets people excited, why don't you go ahead and do one? And then, of course, we had a good laugh because we both know David Sirota doesn't have any talent to do anything like that. Okay. And that's why that was funny. And that's why this was him being jealous of me coming along and I stole his idea. I'm also working on Medicare for all. And so then I brought him on after he wrote this douchebag article. I brought him on the show to confront him about why are you doing this? Why are you asked? And so he made the stupid argument about McCarthy becoming speaker too. Watch this.
Nancy Pelosi, I think ultimately at the end of the day, if you really demanded that she actually do something on Medicare for all, it was a choice between letting Kevin McCarthy become Speaker of the House, which would be a very bad thing, or doing something real on Medicare for all.
That was never the choice. And so guys like David Sirota and Ryan Grimm and Cenk Uygur wanted to muddy the waters as much as they could. This was one of the tactics. They would say McCarthy could become speaker. He could not. Another one would say, I'm not asking for enough. David Sirota did both those things. Ryan Grimm just did the one.
I've seen Sirota on the Hill. Him and Ryan didn't explain to him that that's not how that works with Kevin McCarthy, like his good buddy Ryan.
He knew.
I don't have a confidence that she would care to do the right thing. And so when you're negotiating with people like that, that's the trump card, no pun intended, that they're willing to do actual, true, serious damage to human.
So he was saying, so his argument is Nancy Pelosi is willing to give the speakership over to the Republicans, before she'd give us a vote on Medicare for all. At that point, first of all, that's not true. But that's not going to happen. Again, McCarthy cannot become speaker. And if Nancy Pelosi was willing to do that, wow, shouldn't people know that? Shouldn't we see that? And isn't your bigger problem now Nancy Pelosi? Anyway, so that was what he was saying. So then he went off, and I was saying that was messed up that he was doing that, right? And he started saying I was lying, and so we brought him back on the air. Like he went off the air. Well, here, let me finish this.
Beings, and that's a real problem when you're trying to negotiate with people like that.
What I hear you saying, David, is you're giving it an out for them to not do this, and that's disappointing.
No, I'm not giving them an out.
Yeah,
I'm saying I don't know the answer to when push really came to shove. If you said, I want...
So now David Sirota, again, now he says we deceptively edited this video. He says, I don't know what, I'm not putting any words in his mouth. I don't know what he thinks we cut out, but I'm showing how he was pushing that lie. And I don't know why he was doing it.
These things that you really don't want to do. And that those lawmakers should then vote in the way that we're talking about to elect Kevin McCarthy speaker. That's
up to Nancy Pelosi, and
Maybe it's sort of a moot point. I don't know. But I'm saying, like, when I think through that, just as a human being,
you're misframing this. You keep misframing the issue. You're misframing it as, are you really going to hand it over to? No, that's Nancy Pelosi's call. So he came back on, and when he came back on, he did this.
I mean, I would ask you, do
Can
you
you turn
think
it
it
up?
would be a good thing for Kevin McCarthy to be Speaker? That's just forget about the negotiating part. Forget about the tactic. Just answer that question. Is it a good or bad thing for Kevin McCarthy to be Speaker?
That's not the question.
Don't deflect. Just answer that goddamn question.
That wasn't and that was never the question.
I have a question.
Sure.
Aren't a bunch of Republicans going to take over the fucking House the next election because they suck this whole time?
Yes,
I mean, like,
that is exactly
hindsight
right.
being 2020. I think it's going to be a good deal worse than Kevin McCarthy taking over, won't it?
It's going to not be good. So then he went and started tweeting again and saying, I deceptively edited, he supports forced to vote. Yes, he was saying we were pointing out how he was talking out of both sides of his mouth. That he was trying to, just like Cenk Uygur saying, oh, I'm for it, and Ryan Grimm saying, I'm kind of for it. But then they would give you all these bullshit things that would muddy the waters, and that was one of them. And so we pointed out how David Sirota was talking out of both sides of his mouth, how Cenk was lying, and how Ryan Grimm was also gaslighting. So
wait, can I ask you something?
Yeah, let me just show
sorry.
this. And so David Sirota said, I agree with Jimmy Dore and Bree Joy. Would be very, yes, he was saying this, and then he would also say shit like that. So he was saying both things, and that's pretty shitty. And we pointed it out, and he kept lying, saying that we weren't telling the whole story. This is the whole story. He was saying this one moment, and he was saying that the other moment. Okay. Go ahead, Kurt.
Okay, so here's how I understand it. So Ryan Grimm explained to you that's not a real thing that it automatically goes to him.
Right.
He was saying that he knows that Nancy Pelosi will on purpose make sure it's McCarthy, even though it doesn't have to be. She'll make sure of it to sabotage the whole thing.
He was saying she would let it be. Not that she would make sure. She wouldn't give us force to vote, and then McCarthy would become Speaker. That's not true.
Wouldn't that be on her?
Yes, that would be. First of all, that would never ever happen. That's not how it works.
If I don't have health
if Nancy Pelosi if they didn't vote for Nancy Pelosi as Speaker, another fucking Democrat would become Speaker, not Kevin McCarthy. It couldn't possibly be a Republican because you need a majority of votes. The only way Kevin McCarthy can become Speaker is if the squad voted for him, and of course they would never do that. They would vote for a Democrat. So go ahead.
Do you think that like a friend called them and was like, you have to say that, like, because I mean, everything could be jealousy, I guess, but that sounds like they talk to somebody inside and was like, hey, you can't be pushing this because you know what'll happen? Nancy Pelosi, something Kevin McCarthy, and then they're like, have to go back on their own feelings.
It seemed like a coordinated effort. It definitely seemed coordinated. There was a handful of people like Cenk and him and Ryan that were pushing misinformation at the top of their lungs, and then also trying to say they support, of course they should get something for their vote and they should get more. So it was just garbage. It was all garbage. And here's how the Rising covered it.
Progressives don't have standard issue institutional power right now. They just don't. They have no control. Leadership is devoted to crushing them and smashing them and obliterating them in all the ways possible. So if you're going to be a minority faction who's going to be able to do anything and wield any sort of influence, you have to take a page out of Freedom Caucus's playbook.
Yes.
Be willing to hold things up, be willing to be a gigantic pain in the ass, threaten government funding, threaten Pelosi's speakership. You have to show a willingness to do this. Medicare for all right now, there could not be a single issue where the gap between like what the public supports and what the reality is here in Washington, it's one of the issues where there's the greatest gap. So it makes sense that that would be the place where you focus your energy. And yeah, look, if you can use that leverage to get more than that, by all means, go ahead and do it. But just seeing this floor vote and seeing the willingness of progressives to try to do battle and flex some kind of muscle would be good in and of itself.
I remember this.
So she's referring to all that bullshit of people saying you should try to get more. You should get, but she's like, let's get the one. She's got it right. She's like, let's get the one thing, and let's see if they can flex their muscles on this one thing, which they're not. Okay, here we go. They keep going.
And this is I mean, look, I don't know why this is difficult to understand. And especially, whenever she's like, basically, trust me, it's like, okay, and again, look, I'm an outsider looking in. But, the Congressional Progressive Caucus is one of the biggest failures of this entire story. Jimmy, at least, what Jimmy is that he's somebody sitting in California and maybe made the mistake of believing that some of these people believe what they say. And they're like, oh, yeah, when they said they were going to fight for this, they're actually going to do it. But they're not. And you can see, and look, I accept Sirota and many of these other procedural arguments. I think very much in those terms.
So he's referring to, they're talking about exactly what I'm talking about how they're saying you should try to get more, you should do this, oh, no, but be blah, blah. So they know that was bullshit.
But for those people to have the credibility to say this is what we're actually going to get, then they need to show some sort of fight on the issues that they purport to care about.
Yeah.
And that hasn't materialized.
And look, Jimmy should get a lot of credit here because,
Thank you.
He forced her to respond.
He forced her to respond.
Right.
He forced this conversation was not happening. So the idea that it was like, oh no, we were totally leveraging our votes for speaker. You're just not seeing. I mean, come on. No one was saying any of this before he forced the issue.
Yes.
And look,
What about David Sirota's 25 years working at the public? Remember that? Remember, he's like, I've been doing this for 25 years. Some goddamn, it's easy to do a YouTube rap. Well, if you, again, why didn't you fucking bring it up then, dummy? Here we go.
another part of the pushback from the left has been partly like Jimmy can be very abrasive. I love the guy, but he's very direct. He doesn't pull any punches. And sometimes that rubs people the wrong way.
Yes.
So I think part of this is also like some people want to find a reason to be opposed to this.
Yes.
But it's funny to me because, you know, normally the criticism of Jimmy is like he goes too hard.
Yeah.
And in this instance, what he's asking for is very doable and it's very
Simple.
practical.
Right.
So some of the criticism has actually been, well, you're not going hard enough. I'm like,
That's what David Sirota was saying. He wrote a big article that he kept saying, you got to ask for more things. Ryan Grimm was doing the same thing. There's a lot more stuff you got to fight for. You got to get this, you got to get that, you got to get the committee chairman, you got to get the HHS waiver, you got to get this. You got to ask for more. So that, and she's calling that bullshit out.
Well, you know what they're saying to you is like, you're really not one of our sort.
That's
and
right.
One of our sort should be talking with each other. You see, the way it works is people of our sort, not you, some jagoff,
Yes.
but me, David Sirota, who
Yeah, that's right.
even now writing a script with the great Adam McKay.
That's right.
That's the kind of people that get it done slowly over time.
That's right.
Without yelling.
Without yelling.
come on, this is Jimmy Dore. Are you being serious? So look, if you can get more, go for more. But Medicare for All is the issue where there is the most agreement between not only the Sanders left, but if you poll the Democratic Party, if you poll the country at large, this is a popular issue. Get people on the record, primary those who were pretending to support Medicare for All and don't really, or those who are just adamantly opposed, use this vote to bludgeon them, and finally demonstrate to the country and to your base that you are actually willing to fight for something that people really need and really care about right now that is being left off the table entirely by every other faction in
Look,
Washington.
this is really just a fight about political power. And Jimmy's like, hey, you guys got elected. You know, he's the first person, I think, to put AOC on his show. He's like, I helped you, and so that you could do something. So do it.
Yep. So that was great. They were 100% on it, and they were calling out that bullshit that I just showed you. So now here comes Ryan Grimm's bullshit. So now he goes, it's a tactic, meaning force the vote. He goes, sometimes, now Ryan Grimm is the DC bureau chief for The Intercept and also a defender of the Democratic Party. He's bullshit on foreign policy like they always are, and he lied about force the vote. And so watch this. It's a tactic. Sometimes it's smart. Sometimes it's not. It depends on the circumstances. If it's third down and you need 1 yard, running might be the smart call. If it's 3rd and 30, running isn't the smart call.
God.
It's sadly not 3rd and 1 for Medicare for all. So that's him trying to use a football metaphor to shit on force the vote. Go ahead, Kurt.
Brian, just because your hair looks like a helmet doesn't mean you know how.
So Justin Jackson comes in and bodies him. Says it's not 3rd and 30 either. It was 3rd and 30 when Bernie started running and hardly anyone supported the policy. It's actually 4th and 1 on the goal line, down 14 in the 4th quarter, and they're kicking a field goal. How about go for it and get us closer to taking the lead? So it's 4th and 1 on the goal line. That's an actual football player. That's a professional football player from the LA Chargers. Okay. Ryan Grimm comes back. This is fun. They're worried if they go for it. Not only are they certain they won't make it, but they might be tackled in the backfield and turn it over on downs, leaving their movement worse off than it was to begin. So if we try to get a vote on Medicare for all, it'll hurt the movement for Medicare for all. That's his genius analysis. And this guy still has a job. And they hired him at the Hill afterward. Another billionaire hired him, of course, because he's doing the bidding of fucking billionaires. That's what this is. He's doing the bidding of billionaires. That's who he gets his checks from. He gets 3 checks from 3 different billionaires. Jeffrey Katzenberg, Pierre Omidyar, and whoever that billionaire owns the Hill.
I like how Ryan's in a nice position where he can treat this like it's like football, a thing that really doesn't matter. The thing that matters to you, healthcare you need.
Yeah.
Think of it like a thing that doesn't matter. Thank you, Ryan. I hadn't thought of it like a thing that didn't matter, but in those terms, now I see.
So Justin comes back and says, I'm sorry, man, this is a horrible analogy and the type of thinking that gets coaches fired. You have to take risks, especially when the situation is advantageous. You're arguing for a field goal. The safe play actually increases your chances of losing the game, not vice versa. And then here's my favorite. He says, I'm not arguing for either play. I'm just trying to muddy the waters enough so that people don't listen to Jimmy Dore. And I protect my access to the squad. I'm not arguing for either play, just saying that sometimes a play is right and sometimes that same play under different circumstances is wrong. And people can disagree about that, but still want to win. See, he's trying to go, look, we just disagree on strategy. I'm still for Medicare for all, even though I'm kneecapping our best chance in a generation to get a vote on it. But I'm really for it. That's the same thing David's right. I'm on your side. Jake Uger, too. Jake Uger, I really want this to happen, but not now. Not like this.
Look, I just don't want a bunch of peasants affecting any kind of change.
That's right.
I like that, Ryan. Here's what I like about him. It's not every day you meet a guy whose haircut actually tells you everything you need to know about him.
It's not every day. So he goes on and he says, people can disagree about a play selection and be on the same team is my point. So what he's really saying is nothing. I'm not arguing for anything. But guess what? He didn't fool anybody. You were definitely arguing for a specific play, Ryan. We all know where you stand on this. You were definitely arguing for a specific play. And then what I said is, this is what it looks like when you are paid to do access journalism and run interference for politicians abandoning their own platforms and supporters. I'm not actually saying anything, Ryan Grimm. Briahna Joy Gray said, it is so much more basic than that, Ryan. It's like catching the ball. You should always catch the ball. There's no good reason to let it fall on the ground so the other team can gain possession. This was an unforced fumble. Here's another one. It's amazing when people who have had good health care use football analogies to explain why it's still not time for health care yet during a deadly pandemic.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes, exactly. Here's Brandon Pagano says, did you really think coming to him with a football analogy was the move? Because I respect your bravery, but that wasn't going to go in your favor, no matter how you slice it, my guy.
Ooh,
hey, AOC says Jimmy was right. Ryan, it's not what it looks like, okay? Ryan Grimm trying to nerd-splain football to Justin Jackson is your mediocre white man moment of the week. Well said, Johnny. Because I feel sorry for him, I'm going to give Ryan Grimm an analogy to use that he'll actually understand. Ryan, it's like when you're trying to smear a leftist, but you've lost any shred of credibility you once had, but you do it anyway because you know any little bit helps. That's a great analogy. Ryan Grimm then came out to congratulate the squad. Progressives in the House have one rules change that would allow Medicare for all, a Green New Deal, or other big-ticket agenda items to be exempted from pay-go. This was necessary. This was a necessary step in opening the way for it. See, they had to do this first, you guys. It's not sexy, but they got an exemption to pay-go and then did abso-fucking-lutely nothing with it, as we all said they would. Except Ryan Grimm got fooled. Ryan Grimm is he's just such a bad, he's not lying on purpose. He's just getting everything dumber than a football player and a fucking pothead comedian. We know politics better than him. It's just that Ryan's dumb, not that he's a paid liar. The DC bureau chief, who's been writing politics his entire life, just doesn't know as much as a 24-year-old fucking football player and a pothead comedian. That's all. It's not that he's lying. I don't really see Medicare for All impacted by these changes. That's Dave Dayen saying to Ryan Grimm, yeah, that pay-go's bullshit. That's Dave Dayen. That's his buddy. They're fucking buddies.
What is pay-go?
Pay-go is you can't, if you're gonna add a spending bill, you have to offset it with something you cut.
Ooh.
You know, so they so they wouldn't have to do that. It's a bullshit. So that was, by the way, that's a rule that the Democrats made up, that you don't have to have pay-go. You don't have. They just, Nancy Pelosi made that up so she wouldn't have to do anything, and then they exempt whatever they want from pay-go, like, you know, the CARES Act. which was an upward transfer of $5 trillion. That got an exemption. Anyway, one of the first votes I ever cast broke with my party over House rules that strangled transformative legislation for working people and climate. It was honestly terrifying. Now, the Congressional Progressive Caucus has pushed these critical rule changes in House negotiations. Grateful for Representative McGovern's leadership. She's touting this.
Look at the prairie.
And she was terrified. You should feel sorry for her, not the people who don't have health care. You should feel sorry for AOC because she was scared.
Oh.
She was scared, you guys.
Well, now I believe her, how scared she was on January 6th, nowhere near the incident.
And to be 100% honest, it was hard during this to be targeted and marred as some sellout enemy of the people, because that's what you are. Over a late tactical disagreement over one floor vote. Boy, you could dismiss it any way you want, AOC, but everybody sees through you now. Also a bummer to see figures excuse comments like F her and F anyone who protects her. That's not tone, that's violence. No, that's literally not violence.
Yeah, like
that's literally words.
It's the opposite of violence.
That's the opposite. That's literally speech. Boy, did you see how Jimmy he stabbed her with an adverb.
That's violence.
That's violence.
My God.
So I said, translation, I'm voting for Nancy Pelosi again without doing what I've repeatedly promised I'd do. Fight for Medicare for all and force the vote. There will never be a better time to do this. I know it's immoral to not leverage power in this historic moment. Too bad. Bernie bros are mean.
Well, you know, you forget later she went on to wear a beautiful dress with tax
the rich on the back.
So
she was hanging out with. Yeah, that's right. She didn't do nothing. Voting for Nancy Pelosi without demanding something in return is violence. I agree. I lost my employer-provided insurance in March. Now I'm rationing my medicine. I endure excruciating pain while waiting tables at a restaurant that doesn't offer benefits to part-time workers. That is violence. Hashtag force the vote. Boy, AOC can't hold a candle to a real working person. She can't hold a candle to a real working person. All her fucking drama. Oh, fuck off. 45,000 people die every year from lack of health care. That is violence. You know what else is a bummer? Dying of cancer because you can't afford a doctor. What's more violent than denying health care in the middle of a deadly pandemic while watching 346,000 people die? Oh, right, the F word. Do you know all those the people that died from COVID? at least 200,000 of them would still be alive today if we had Medicare for all. Isn't that violence? But they want you to be angry at your unvaccinated neighbor and not the system that won't give you health care in the middle of a deadly pandemic. But they will mandate that you take a vaccine from Big Pharma. But they won't mandate that you get health care. In which AOC completes her journey from standard bearer to standard barrier. Very nicely said. And by the way, there they are. They're calling Trump motherfuckers. That's Representative. So if they think F her and F anybody. So if the F word is really violence, what is this? They're calling the President of the United States an MFer, and AOC dismisses it. She says, that's faux outrage. That's exactly what you were doing, AOC.
Jimmy, pointing out hypocrisy is violence.
That's right. And here, so after AOC said I was being violent with my words, Cornel West came on my show and said this.
That's why we put pressure on politicians, Brother Dore. That's why it's important for you to keep raising your voice. Mm-hmm. If you got to shout, shout. You got to sing a song, a little Ashford and Simpson, sing a little Ashford and Simpson. If you got to crack your beautiful jokes that you do, crack those jokes. Use whatever gifts you have to make sure you are focusing on the least of these.
So they didn't force the vote. We all know. And Ryan Grimm went on to admit that he was wrong about it in a mealy-mouthed way on Briahna Joy Gray's show. I won't bore you with it. But nobody else,
not to.
Nobody else ever admitted they were wrong about it. Nobody else ever admitted they were gaslighting or talking out of both sides of their mouth. Cenk Uygur never apologized for lying that McCarthy could become speaker, ever. Just like he never apologized for smearing Julian Assange and a million other things. But here's Pramila Jayapal, and here's what she said. This is why she didn't want force the vote. You ready for this? Here we go.
These are the pieces of work that have to happen. If somebody wants to call for us to force a vote on Medicare for all, I am happy to tell you why I think that's a bad idea. It will end our movement. These are the pieces of work that have to happen. If somebody wants to call for us to force a vote on Medicare for all, I am happy to tell you why I think that's a bad idea. It will end our movement.
Is the movement she's referring to is them keeping their jobs? What whose movement? The House or the Senate? The movement to have a corporate coup posing as a government? Yeah, it could hurt that movement. Canada got national health coverage one province at a time. The NHS got voted down 20 times before it was passed. We need to just keep reintroducing bills and doing absolutely nothing. That's how you win. So tell me, Representative Jayapal, how exactly do we pass progressive policies without holding a vote to pass progressive policies? So she said if we held a vote on Medicare for all, it would kill their movement. You mean your movement for Medicare for all? Boy, I'm glad we didn't kill that movement. Look how much closer we are now, Kurt, to getting Medicare for all because we never had a vote on it. We wouldn't be this close. These people are such fucking liars, such charlatans that they won't even bring up the fact that they're not doing a goddamn public option, which Joe Biden ran on. Not only will they not vote on Medicare for all, they won't even bring up a public option, which Joe Biden ran on.
Their movement was never Medicare for all. It was what I take from that. Their movement was like some kind of identity bullshit. That's what I.
She's referring to Medicare for all movement, and that's just a lie. You cannot point. It is. Hey, Chomsky said the same thing. Point to one instance in history where calling for a vote on something set it back. Point, if there was a point in history, they would point to it, but it doesn't exist. It's the exact opposite. You bring things up to a vote, it gets attention, it galvanizes people, it raises the debate, and it moves the ball forward every time. Kyle Kalinske got it right. He said women's suffrage was voted on and failed 3 times before it passed. This is just factually wrong. A losing vote can mobilize more people when they see the disgusting, corrupt rot that is Washington, D.C. What would us not fighting for Medicare for all mean for you and your family? So that was it. That was so there's your that, and that's where it ended, with them lying all the way, and none of those other people who lied and obfuscated and gaslit us. Nobody ever had to pay a price. We never got. They also said that I should have showed you the tweet where AOC was saying, you could put Kurt up. AOC was saying that we got to save our powder so we could get something like $15 minimum wage. They never got a vote on $15 minimum wage. They never got a public option. They never got student debt relief. They never got medical. They got nothing. Nothing. They did a pretend stunt that was going to get you a mortgage moratorium, but that was just a stunt that was coordinated well ahead of time, and everyone knew it wasn't going to go anywhere. So the Young Turks still sell the pictures of AOC and at their website. Ryan Grimm is still getting checks from 3 billionaires, and he's ready to lie to you about any kind of progressive agenda at any moment. Cenk Uygur is still lying to you. Never retracted the lie about Julian Assange. Never retracted the lie about Aaron Matei. Never retracted the lies about me. Never retracted the lie about Kevin McCarthy become speaker. But he will ask you for, at 2 a.m. from his cell phone, he'll ask you to send them $10,000.
Okay, when you say that, Jimmy, he does sound like he'd have made a great congressional candidate. Now that you're
So that's my wrap up of Forced to Vote. I hope you enjoyed it. Hey, come see a live Jimmy Dore show. We're in Los Angeles, January 7th and 14th. Then we're in Raleigh, North Carolina, and Philadelphia. Go to jimmydoorecomedy.com for a link for all tickets and become a premium member to get access to all our premium videos.